The stars were dying, and Commander Tae-min knew it. He stood in the command center of the Coalition's last research station, watching red alerts flash across every screen. The Void Swarm had taken another system. 3 billion lives gone in. A matter of hours. "Sir," his aide called out, her voice tight with fear. "The Kepler defense line has fallen. They're requesting immediate evacuation." Tae-min closed his eyes. The Kepler line was supposed to hold for months. It lasted 3 days. The Void Swarm was getting stronger, and the Galactic Defense Coalition was running out of places to run. For 200 years, the Coalition had fought these creatures. The Void Swarm appeared without warning, consuming everything in their path. They turned planets into empty husks and left behind only darkness. No one knew where they came from or what they wanted. They just destroyed. Commander, Dr. So-young, approached his station. She was the Coalition's best xenobiologist, and one of the few people who still believed they could win this war. "I have something you need to see." She activated her datapad, showing him a star map. A small blue dot blinked in the outer rim territories, far from the main shipping lanes. "What am I looking at?" Tae-min asked. "A planet," So-young said. "Class M, single star system. Our deep space probes found it yesterday. It's inhabited." Tae-min felt his heart sink. Another species to evacuate, another civilization to watch die. "How many?" 8 billion, So-young replied. "But Commander, that's not the interesting part. This species has survived multiple extinction events on their world. Asteroid impacts, ice ages, volcanic eruptions, disease outbreaks. They keep bouncing back." "Survivors," Tae-min muttered. "Maybe they'll last longer than most when the swarm finds them." "Sir, I request permission to make first contact. We need to study their survival methods. Maybe they know something we don't." Tae-min looked at the tactical display. The Void Swarm was still 3 sectors away from the blue planet. They had time. Barely. "Take a small diplomatic vessel," he said. "Standard first contact protocol, and Doctor, be careful. The swarm has scouts everywhere." 2 days later, Dr. So-young's ship dropped out of hyperspace above the blue planet. It was beautiful. Vast oceans covered most of the surface, with green and brown continents scattered between them. The species called their world Earth, and they called themselves humans. So-young's team set up a meeting site on Earth's moon. Standard procedure kept first contact away from populated areas. When the human delegation arrived, she was surprised by what she saw. The humans were similar to many Coalition species. 2 arms, 2 legs, basic tool use. But there was something different about the way they moved. They walked with confidence, like predators who had never learned to fear. Their leader introduced himself as Captain Jae-ho of Earth's Space Defense Corps. He was young for a military commander, with dark eyes that seemed to see everything at once. "Dr. So-young," he said, extending his hand in what she learned was a human greeting. "We've been waiting for someone to find us." "Waiting?" So-young asked. "You knew about other species?" Jae-ho smiled. "We hoped. Our scientists always said the universe was too big for us to be alone. When we detected your ship, we figured it was time to join the larger community." So-young felt a chill. Most species were terrified during first contact. These humans seemed excited. "Captain Jae-ho," she began, "I need to warn you about something. There's a threat moving through this region of space. We call it the Void Swarm. They destroy everything they touch. We're here to offer evacuation services." Jae-ho's expression changed. His smile disappeared, replaced by something harder. "Doctor, with respect, we don't evacuate. We fight." Before So-young could respond, alarms started blaring from both ships. Her communications officer shouted across the landing site, "Void Scouts! 3 ships dropping out of hyperspace!" So-young felt her blood freeze. Void Scouts were fast, deadly, and completely without mercy. Her small diplomatic vessel had no weapons, and the human ship looked primitive by Coalition standards. "Captain, we need to retreat immediately," she called to Jae-ho. "Void Scouts will tear us apart." But J-Ho was already moving. He spoke rapidly into a device on his wrist, issuing orders in the human language. Instead of running toward the ships, the humans spread out across the lunar surface, taking cover behind rocks and equipment. "What are you doing?" So Young demanded. "We have to get off this moon." "Doctor," J-Ho said calmly, checking a weapon she hadn't noticed him carrying. "In human culture, when something threatens your home, you don't run. You make it wish it had never found you." The Void Scouts landed like falling meteors, their black ships opening to release swarms of insect-like drones. So Young had seen this before. The drones would tear apart anything that moved, sending the data back to the main swarm. Then the real attack would begin. She expected the humans to panic. Every species did when they first encountered Void technology. Instead, J-Ho raised his weapon and spoke one word into his communicator. Hunt. What happened next would be talked about in coalition command centers for years. The humans didn't fight like any civilized species. They fought like something wild and desperate and completely unafraid of death. They used primitive kinetic weapons that fired solid projectiles. They moved in small groups, covering each other with practiced efficiency. When the Void drones swarmed toward them, the humans didn't retreat. They charged. So Young watched from behind her ship's landing gear as Captain J-Ho ran directly at a group of drones, firing his weapon while screaming something that sounded like a war cry. Other humans flanked the drones from both sides, creating crossfires that tore the alien machines apart. When one human fell, the others didn't abandon him. They formed a protective circle and fought even harder. When their weapons ran empty, they used tools, rocks, even their bare hands. The Void drones, designed to harvest fleeing prey, seemed confused by creatures that refused to flee. In 10 minutes, it was over. Every Void drone lay destroyed on the lunar surface. The scout ships, apparently deciding this planet wasn't worth the effort, retreated into hyperspace. J-Ho walked over to where So Young was hiding, his weapon smoking in the thin atmosphere. "Doctor," he said, offering his hand to help her up, "I think we need to talk." That night, aboard So Young's ship, she sent an emergency transmission to Commander Tae-min. "Sir," she said, "I found something. Not refugees, not another species to evacuate. I found warriors. The humans don't know about faster-than-light travel or energy weapons or any of our technology. But they know how to fight. And, sir, they're not afraid of the Void Swarm. I think the Void Swarm should be afraid of them." The message would reach Tae-min in 6 hours. By then, Captain J-Ho would be aboard a coalition vessel, heading for the front lines, and the galaxy would learn what happened when humans joined the fight. Dr. Hyojin stood on the deck of the research vessel floating above Earth's Mariana Trench. 3 weeks had passed since first contact with the coalition, and strange things were happening in Earth's oceans. "Doctor, you need to see this," her assistant called from the sonar station. The readings showed something impossible. Massive structures were rising from the deepest parts of the ocean floor. Hyojin had been studying Earth's seas for 20 years. She knew every trench, every ridge, every underwater mountain. But the shapes appearing on her screens had never been there before. "How big are these structures?" she asked. "The largest one is over 3 kilometers long," her assistant replied. "And doctor, it's moving." Meanwhile, 2,000 kilometers above Earth's surface, Lieutenant Dong-Woo was having strange dreams aboard the Coalition flagship. He was one of 50 humans selected for immediate integration into the Galactic Defense Forces. The Coalition wanted to study human fighting methods and see how quickly they could adapt to alien technology. In his dreams, Dong-Woo swam through vast underwater cities filled with creatures he had never seen, massive beings with tentacles longer than skyscrapers watched him with ancient eyes. They spoke without words, their thoughts flowing into his mind like ocean currents. "The deep guardians wake," they told him. "The time of hiding ends. The children of the surface reach for the stars, and we rise to join them." Dongwu woke up in his bunk, his body covered in sweat that smelled like seawater. He hadn't been near an ocean in weeks. Down on Earth, Captain J-Ho was dealing with reports from naval bases around the world. Ships were detecting massive sonar contacts in deep water. Submarine commanders reported seeing lights moving beneath them. Lights that followed no known migration patterns. The reports all described the same thing. Giant shapes moving through the deep ocean, too large to be whales, too purposeful to be geological formations. Whatever they were active, and they were everywhere. Dr. Hae-jin decided she needed to see these creatures for herself. She took her deep-sea submersible down into the Mariana Trench, following the sonar readings toward the largest moving structure. At 8,000 meters depth, her lights illuminated something that shouldn't exist. It was a creature, but also a machine. Organic curves flowed into metallic structures. Tentacles as thick as subway tunnels were equipped with devices that pulsed with their own inner light. The being was enormous. Hae-jin's submersible could have fit inside one of its eyes, but when it noticed her tiny craft, it didn't attack. It communicated. Images flowed into Hae-jin's mind. She saw Earth as it was millions of years ago, when the first life crawled from the oceans. She saw these guardians waiting and watching as evolution shaped the planet's surface. They had been here all along, protecting humanity's ancestors from threats that came from the deep spaces between stars. "We are the Leviathans," the creature told her without speaking. "We have waited for your kind to grow strong enough to join the greater hunt. The darkness between stars stirs once more, and you will need our help to survive it." On the Coalition flagship, Lieutenant Dongwu was called to an emergency briefing. Admiral Yu Jin, a Coalition veteran who had fought the Void Swarm for decades, stood before a holographic display showing the Outer Rim territories. "3 hours ago," Yu Jin said, "our deep space sensors detected a massive Void Swarm formation moving toward human space. 50 capital ships, thousands of fighters, enough firepower to crack a planet. They'll reach Earth in 6 days. The human volunteers looked at each other. They had barely learned to operate Coalition equipment. They weren't ready for a major battle. However, Yu Jin continued, we're also detecting something else. Massive energy signatures rising from Earth's oceans. Whatever's down there, it's big, it's powerful, and it's moving toward space." Dongwu felt his heart race. His dreams were becoming real. Dr. Hae-jin surfaced from her dive to find chaos on her research vessel. The ocean around them was boiling with movement. Massive shapes were rising from the depths, breaking the surface for the first time in geological ages. The first Leviathan to fully emerge looked like a cross between a whale and a spaceship. Its hide was covered in biomechanical structures that hummed with energy. Smaller creatures, like living fighters, swam through the air around it. They moved through atmosphere as easily as they moved through water. "All vessels, this is Captain J-Ho," came a transmission from Earth Defense Command. "Do not engage the emerging contacts. Repeat, do not engage. Dr. Hae-jin, please report your status." Hae-jin grabbed her radio with shaking hands. "Captain, the creatures are not hostile. They're trying to help. They've been protecting Earth for millions of years. They say something called a Void Swarm is coming, and they're preparing to defend us." Around the world, more Leviathans broke the surface. Each one was unique, evolved for different purposes. Some looked like massive jellyfish with energy weapons growing from their bells. Others resembled squid with hulls that gleamed like metal, but flexed like living tissue. The largest emerged from the Pacific depths. It was so vast that Earth's satellites detected it as a new island. But as it rose higher, its purpose became clear. This was a ship, a living vessel capable of carrying thousands of smaller creatures into space. Lieutenant Dongwu felt the dreams intensify. The Leviathans were calling to him, offering partnership. They needed human pilots who could think in 3 dimensions, who could adapt quickly to changing situations. In return, they offered their ancient wisdom and their biomechanical technology. Admiral Eugene watched the tactical displays in amazement. How many of these creatures are there? Sensors show at least 300 major contacts, her aide reported. And sir, they're not just rising from Earth's oceans. We're detecting similar signatures from ocean worlds throughout human space. Wherever humans have settled near water, these things are waking up. On Earth, Dr. Hyojin found herself aboard one of the smaller leviathans. The creature had somehow created an air-filled chamber inside its body, allowing her to breathe while she learned to communicate with it. We have slept in the deep places, the leviathan explained, waiting for the surface children to be ready. The great enemy returns, the devourers of light. But this time, the hunt will be different. This time, we hunt together. The creature showed her images of space battles, of human creativity merged with Leviathan biotechnology. She saw fighters that could heal themselves mid-battle, ships that grew new weapons as they fought, fleets that moved through space like schools of fish but struck like apex predators. As Earth's new allies continued to rise from the depths, Lieutenant Dong-Woo made his choice. He volunteered to be the first human to bond with a Leviathan pilot. The procedure was risky, involving technology that merged organic and digital systems in ways Coalition scientists didn't understand. But as the connection formed, Dong-Woo felt something wonderful. The vast intelligence of the ocean creatures flowed through his mind, bringing with it millions of years of accumulated knowledge. At the same time, the Leviathan experienced human emotions for the first time, the fierce joy of battle and the protective love for home that drove humanity to fight impossible odds. When the Void Swarm arrived at Earth, they expected to find a primitive species cowering behind Coalition defenses. Instead, they found something that had never existed before in galactic history. They found humans riding the legends of the deep into battle, ready to turn the ocean of space into their hunting ground. Pilot Sung-Ho had never been afraid of the dark, but space was different. It wasn't just empty, it was hungry. The Void Swarm had taken the Andromeda colonies 6 months ago, and now they were spreading toward the inner systems like a plague. He floated in the docking bay of the Coalition flagship, watching his new partner emerge from the transport tanks. The Leviathan called itself the Abyssal Hunter, and it was unlike anything in the galaxy's military databases. The creature was 40 meters long, shaped like a massive cuttlefish, but covered in biomechanical armor that pulsed with bioluminescent patterns. Where traditional starfighters had engines, the Hunter had tentacles that could grip space itself, pulling the ship through dimensions that physics said shouldn't exist. "Are you ready for Neuralink?" Dr. So-Young asked. She had become the Coalition's expert on human-Leviathan bonding after her success with the first contact protocols. Sung-Ho nodded, though his stomach churned with nervousness. The bonding process was still experimental. 3 human pilots had tried it before him. 2 had succeeded. One had spent a week believing he was actually a sea creature before the medical team could separate the consciousness. The neural crown felt cold against his skull as the technicians activated the link. For a moment, Sung-Ho felt nothing. Then the universe exploded into sensation. He was swimming through an ocean of stars, feeling the gravitational currents like water flowing around his body. The Hunter's consciousness merged with his own, ancient and patient and utterly alien. But underneath the strangeness, he felt something familiar. The creature was a predator, just like him. "Systems integration complete," Dr. So-Young announced. "Sung-Ho, can you hear me?" "We hear you," Sung-Ho replied, and was surprised by the plural. He was still himself, but he was also something more. The Hunter's senses showed him space in ways human eyes could never see. Electromagnetic fields became visible currents. Gravity wells looked like whirlpools in the fabric of reality. Their first mission was a rescue operation. The research station at Proxima Base had gone silent 3 days ago. Coalition scouts reported void swarm activity in the area, but no one knew if there were survivors. Sung Ho and the Hunter launched with a small fleet of traditional Coalition fighters. The other pilots watched nervously as the biomechanical ship twisted through space, moving in ways that seemed to ignore Newton's laws. When they reached Proxima Base, they found a scene of devastation. The station was dark, its hull torn open by void weapons, but the Hunter's enhanced senses detected something the other ships missed. "There," Sung Ho whispered, feeling the creature's excitement as they spotted movement inside the wreckage. Life signs, weak but present. The problem was getting to them. The station was surrounded by void mines, floating spheres of dark energy that would detonate if anything came too close. Coalition ships had no way to navigate the minefield without triggering a chain reaction that would destroy whatever survivors remained. But the Hunter had been designed to hunt in the deepest ocean trenches, where pressure and darkness made navigation impossible. It extended sensory tentacles that could feel the electromagnetic signatures of the mines, mapping safe passages through the field. "Follow our path," Sung Ho transmitted to the other pilots. "Stay exactly in our wake." The rescue took 6 hours. The Hunter flowed through the minefield like water, finding the spaces between rocks, with the Coalition fighters following in single file. When they reached the station, they found 47 survivors huddled in an emergency shelter, their life support failing. But as they loaded the survivors onto transport ships, new contacts appeared on the sensors. Void Hunters, sleek predator ships designed to track down fleeing prey. They moved in perfect formation, like a pack of wolves closing in for the kill. "All ships, prepare for combat," the squadron leader commanded. Sung Ho felt the Hunter's response before he consciously decided to act. The creature's battle instincts were millions of years old, refined by evolution in an environment where only the smartest and deadliest survived. Instead of forming up with the other fighters, the Hunter dove down relative to the galactic plane, disappearing into the gravity shadow of a nearby asteroid. The void ships followed standard pursuit patterns, spreading out to cover all escape vectors. They never saw the Hunter coming. The biomechanical ship erupted from the asteroid field like a kraken rising from the deep. Its tentacles lashed out, not with weapons, but with some kind of energy field that disrupted the void ship's electronics. 2 enemy fighters spun out of control, their systems failing. The Hunter's main weapons were unlike anything in Coalition arsenals. Instead of energy beams or projectiles, it fired living ammunition, guided organisms that could change course mid-flight, pursuing targets through evasive maneuvers that would confuse traditional missiles. The battle lasted 12 minutes. When it was over, 6 void ships were destroyed, and the rest had fled. The Coalition pilots stared at their sensors in disbelief. "How did you do that?" the squadron leader asked. Sung Ho struggled to find words. "We didn't fight them like a space battle. We hunted them like prey." Word of the Hunter's success spread through the Coalition fleet. More human pilots volunteered for Leviathan bonding, and each partnership revealed new capabilities. Engineer Mi Young discovered that her bonded creature could absorb enemy weapons' fire and use the energy to grow stronger armor. Captain Wu Jin learned that his partner could split into multiple smaller organisms, allowing him to attack from several directions at once. The most shocking discovery came when Mi Young's Leviathan encountered a damaged void ship. Instead of destroying it, the creature extended feeding tentacles and began consuming the dark energy that powered enemy systems. "It's using void matter as food," Mi Young reported in amazement. "The corruption that destroys our ships is just nutrition to these things." Dr. So Young studied the recordings with growing excitement. "Don't you see what this means? The void swarm isn't invincible. They're just another part of the ecosystem. And the Leviathans are their natural predators." The war began to change. Human Leviathan teams started hunting void scouts instead of just defending against them. They developed new tactics, using the creature's ability to sense dark energy to track enemy movements across vast distances. Captain Wu Jin led the most famous mission, called the Deep Strike. Intelligence had located a Void command ship, a massive vessel that coordinated attacks across an entire sector. Destroying it could save millions of lives, but the ship was protected by layers of smaller vessels and automated defenses. Wu Jin's plan was simple and insane. His Leviathan would disguise itself as space debris, allowing the Void ships to capture it. Once inside the enemy vessel, human marines would deploy from the creature's body cavity and capture the ship from within. "You want us to get eaten by a Void ship?" Lieutenant Dongwu asked during the briefing. "Not eaten," Wu Jin replied with a grin. "Swallowed. There's a difference." The mission launched with Wu Jin's Leviathan carrying 20 human marines in specially designed survival pods. The creature made itself look like a damaged coalition fighter, drifting helplessly in space. When the Void command ship extended its harvesting tentacles, the Leviathan allowed itself to be pulled inside. The enemy ship's internal structure was organic, a maze of pulsing corridors and processing chambers. But the Leviathan had evolved to navigate similar environments in Earth's deep ocean trenches. It released the Marines in the ship's central nervous system, then began growing new passages to give them access to critical systems. The battle inside the Void ship was unlike anything in military history. Human soldiers fought through living corridors, while their Leviathan partner created new routes in real time. When enemy defenses adapted to block one path, the creature simply grew another. In 4 hours, they had captured the command ship intact. For the first time, the Coalition had a living Void vessel to study. More importantly, they had proven that humans and Leviathans together could accomplish the impossible. News of the Deep Strike reached every Coalition world within days. Morale, which had been crumbling for years, began to recover. The Void Swarm was no longer an unstoppable force of nature. They were prey, and humanity had found the perfect hunting partners. Admiral Yu Jin watched the tactical displays from her command center, seeing Void-controlled space shrinking for the first time in decades. "How many human Leviathan teams do we have operational?" 300 and rising, her aide reported. "More humans are volunteering every day, and the Leviathans seem to be waking up on every water world in human space." Yu Jin smiled grimly. The war was far from over, but the balance had shifted. The galaxy was learning what Earth's oceans had always known. In the deepest places, legends waited, and when they rose to hunt, nothing could stand against them. The Void Swarm was learning, and that terrified everyone who understood what it meant. Commander Kyung-soo stood in the command center of New Tokyo Station, watching the enemy fleet approach on the long-range sensors. These weren't the same ships they had been fighting for months. "Sir," his communications officer called out, "the new vessels are 50% larger than previous Void ships. Our databases show no record of this class." Kyung-soo studied the tactical display. The approaching fleet moved differently, too. Instead of the chaotic swarm attacks they had grown used to, these ships flew in precise formations. They had adapted to human Leviathan tactics. "Signal the evacuation fleet," he ordered. "All civilian transports are to begin loading immediately." New Tokyo Station housed 2 million people in the Outer Rim territories. It was humanity's largest deep space colony, built around a massive space dock that serviced ships traveling to the frontier worlds. If it fell, the Void Swarm would have a clear path to the inner systems. Dr. Hansol worked frantically in the station's research labs, trying to understand the new threat. The Void ships showed signs of biological adaptation, growing new structures that seemed designed to counter Leviathan attacks. "They're learning from our victories," she told Kyung-soo over the comm. "Every time we develop a new tactic, they find a countermeasure. These new ships have some kind of bioelectric shielding that disrupts neural links." The first wave of attacks confirmed her fears. When pilot Sung Ho and the Abyssal Hunter engaged the enemy scouts, their connection began failing within minutes. The Hunter's biomechanical systems sparked and convulsed as enemy signals overwhelmed its nervous system. "We can't maintain the link," Sung Ho reported, his voice strained. "Something is interfering with our bond." Across the battlefield, other human Leviathan teams reported similar problems. The enemy had found a way to turn their greatest strength into a weakness. "All Leviathan units fall back to defensive positions," Admiral Yu Jin commanded from the Coalition flagship. "Do not engage the new vessels directly," but falling back wasn't enough. The Harbinger-class destroyers, as intelligence, had designated them, possessed weapons that could crack small moons. Their first salvo punched through New Tokyo Station's shields like they were made of paper. "Hull breaches on levels 40 through 60, Damage Control reported. "We're losing atmosphere on 12 decks." Kyung-soo made the hardest decision of his military career. "All personnel, abandon station. This is not a drill. Proceed to evacuation points immediately." The evacuation should have been impossible. 2 million people, thousands of ships, all trying to flee while under enemy fire. The Harbinger destroyers moved to cut off escape routes, their massive forms blocking hyperspace exit points. That's when the Deep Mother arrived. The creature emerged from hyperspace like a small moon, dwarfing every ship in the system. It was ancient even by Leviathan standards, so old that its biomechanical systems had evolved beyond anything seen before. Coral cities grew on its back, and its hide bristled with defensive structures that looked like living reefs. "All evacuation transports, this is Commander Kyung-soo. Make for the large organism. It's offering sanctuary." The Deep Mother opened, massive chambers in its body, creating docking bays that could hold entire city blocks. Civilian ships flew into what looked like the creature's mouth, disappearing into organic tunnels that led to safety. As the last transport ships entered the Leviathan's body, the Harbinger destroyers moved in for the kill. Their weapons could destroy planets, but the Deep Mother had been born in the crushing depths of Earth's deepest trenches. It had survived pressure that would collapse stars. The enemy weapons struck its hide and simply absorbed into the creature's bioarmor. The Deep Mother consumed the energy, growing new defensive structures in real time. When the Harbingers tried to close to ramming distance, the creature did something unprecedented. It dove, not into water, but into the gravity well of the system's gas giant. The massive planet's atmosphere was a maze of storm systems and crushing pressure layers. No ship could survive in that environment, but the Deep Mother wasn't a ship. For 3 months, 2 million humans lived inside the Leviathan's body while it fed on the gas giant's methane storms. The creature's internal ecosystem supported them, growing food from the planet's atmospheric compounds and recycling their waste into useful materials. Dr. Hansol found herself in a laboratory that grew around her needs, formed from the Deep Mother's living tissues. She had access to research capabilities that exceeded anything on New Tokyo Station. The creature's body was a living factory, capable of producing any technology she could imagine. "This is incredible," she reported to Commander Kyung-soo. "The Leviathan's cellular structure can be programmed like a computer. I can literally grow new types of weapons and equipment." Working with the Deep Mother's biosystems, Hansol developed hybrid technologies that combined human engineering with millions of years of biological evolution. She created weapons that could adapt to enemy defenses in real time, armor that healed itself faster than it could be damaged, and communication systems that worked through quantum entanglement in living tissue. Outside, the Void Swarm assumed all the refugees had died in the gas giant's storms. They left a small patrol to monitor the system and moved on to attack other targets. It was exactly what Kyung-soo had hoped for. "Phase 2, he announced to his senior staff. "We're not just hiding in here. We're preparing." The humans used their time inside the Deep Mother to train and adapt. Children born during the evacuation grew up in an environment where the walls could reshape themselves on command. They learned to communicate with the Leviathan's systems as naturally as they learned to speak. These new humans were different. They could interface with biomechanical technology without neural crowns. They could breathe in the creature's modified atmosphere and see in spectrums of light that normal humans couldn't detect. Engineer Mi Young worked with teams of these hybrid children to develop new types of fighters. The craft they created were part machine, part living creature, part something entirely new. They could repair themselves by consuming space debris, grow new weapons mid-battle, and reproduce by dividing like living cells. "We're not just building ships," Mi Young explained to Admiral Yu Jin during one of their quantum-encrypted communications. "We're breeding them. Each fighter learns from the battles it survives and passes that knowledge to its offspring." The breakthrough came when Dr. Hansol discovered how to weaponize gas giants. Working with the Deep Mother's vast processing capabilities, she learned to create controlled fusion reactions in planetary atmospheres. The entire gas giant could become a bomb with the power to destroy enemy fleets. "The Void Swarm thinks in terms of consuming solid matter," Hansol explained. "They don't understand that gas giants are just energy waiting to be released. We can turn everyone into a trap." When the Deep Mother finally emerged from the gas giant's atmosphere, it brought with it a new type of warfare. The creature had grown weapons that could ignite planetary atmospheres from light years away. It carried a fleet of hybrid fighters that moved through space like living things. The Void patrol ships that had been monitoring the system had time for one panicked transmission before the gas giant behind them exploded. The fusion reaction created a chain of smaller explosions that spread across the system, consuming every piece of dark matter the enemy had left behind. "This is Commander Kyung-soo to all Coalition forces," he transmitted from the Deep Mother's command center. The evacuation of New Tokyo was successful. All 2 million colonists are alive and well. We've also developed new weapons based on Leviathan biotechnology, uploading tactical data now. The information that reached Coalition Command changed everything they thought they knew about the war. The humans hadn't just survived inside the Leviathan. They had evolved. They had learned to use the creature's body as a mobile research facility, weapons factory and population center all at once. Admiral Yu Jin studied the reports with growing amazement. They turned a refugee crisis into a strategic advantage. How many more of these Deep Mothers are there? Sensors show at least a dozen similar signatures emerging from gas giants throughout human space, her aide reported. It appears the Leviathans have been using planetary atmospheres as hiding places for millennia. The war was entering a new phase. The Void Swarm had adapted to fight human Leviathan teams, but they had never faced an enemy that could turn planets into weapons, that could hide entire populations inside living creatures, that could evolve new technologies faster than they could develop countermeasures. The Harbinger destroyers had won a single battle, but they had awakened something far more dangerous. They had forced humanity and the Leviathans to merge into something new, something that could survive in the deepest, most hostile environments the universe could create. In the crushing depths of gas giant atmospheres, where pressure could collapse matter into exotic states, where storms raged with the power of small suns, new legends were being born. And when they rose to hunt, they would bring with them weapons forged in the hearts of worlds. Earth's oceans were empty for the first time in 4 billion years. President Na Young stood on the observation deck of the World Whale, watching her home planet shrink in the distance. Every Leviathan had answered the call, rising from the deepest trenches to join humanity's final march to the galactic core. The creature she rode was older than complex life on Earth. Cities covered its back like barnacles, each one housing thousands of humans who had chosen to leave their world behind. The World Whale was so massive that it had its own weather systems, its own gravity field, its own ecosystem of smaller creatures that had evolved to live on its hide. "Status report," Na Young requested from her command center, built inside what had once been the creature's brainstem. The Leviathan had willingly allowed humans to integrate their technology with its nervous system, creating a hybrid consciousness that spanned biological and digital realms. All fleet elements are in position, Admiral Hyun-woo reported from the tactical station. He commanded forces that defied every previous understanding of military organization, ships that were alive, weapons that could think, entire fleets that moved like schools of fish through the cosmic deep. The Coalition's final stand would take place in the Maelstrom Nebula, where gravitational anomalies created currents in space-time itself. It was the perfect environment for creatures that had evolved to hunt in Earth's deepest ocean trenches, where pressure and darkness made normal navigation impossible. "Sir," the sensor operator called out, "detecting massive dark matter, signatures at the nebula's edge. The entire void swarm is converging on our position." Na-young felt the world whale's response through the neural link. The ancient creature was not afraid. It was excited. For millions of years it had dreamed of this moment when the children of the surface would finally be ready to face the darkness between stars. The enemy fleet that emerged from hyperspace was larger than anything seen before in galactic history. Millions of void ships, from tiny scouts to planet killers the size of moons. At their center flew something that made even the world whale seem small by comparison. "Analysis complete," Dr. Hansol reported from the science station. "The central entity shows characteristics of both organic and artificial intelligence. I believe we're looking at the Void Queen herself. The Queen was beautiful in the way that hurricanes were beautiful, terrible and perfect, and completely destructive. Her body stretched across light years, a writhing mass of dark energy that consumed starlight itself. Smaller void ships orbited her like parasites, feeding on the power she radiated. All units," Admiral Hyun-woo commanded, "remember your training. We're not fighting a space battle. We're hunting in an ocean that happens to be made of vacuum and dark matter." The human Leviathan fleet moved through the nebula like a living thing. Ships that had once been traditional coalition vessels now bore coral armor and biomechanical weapons. Fighters split and recombined like schools of fish, overwhelming enemy sensors with unpredictable movement patterns. Pilot Sung-ho rode his bonded creature through gravitational currents that would tear apart normal ships. The Abyssal Hunter had evolved during months of combat, growing new organs that could manipulate space-time directly. It didn't fly through the nebula so much as swim through the fabric of reality itself. "Contact," he reported, as Void Scouts detected his approach. "Engaging enemy pickets." The battle that followed occurred in dimensions that human minds could barely comprehend. The Leviathans had learned to hunt in environments where up and down had no meaning, where time flowed at different rates depending on gravitational fields. They turned the nebula's chaotic physics into weapons. Captain Woo Jin led a squadron of hybrid fighters through a region where space folded back on itself. His craft could phase between dimensions, appearing behind enemy formations that thought they were attacking from the rear. The void ships, designed for normal three-dimensional combat, couldn't adapt to an enemy that refused to obey the laws of physics. But the real shock came when the smaller Leviathans began to merge. Dr. Hansol watched in amazement as creatures that had operated independently for months suddenly flowed together, forming larger and more complex organisms. "They're creating meta-entities," she reported. "Individual Leviathans combining into group intelligences. The tactical implications are staggering. A dozen whale ships merged into a single entity the size of a small moon. 100 squid fighters flowed together into a massive tentacled horror that could lash out across light years. The human pilots found their consciousness expanded, suddenly, able to think and fight as part of a collective mind that spanned multiple organisms. Engineer Mi-young experienced the merger firsthand when her bonded creature joined with 5 others to form a living battleship. Her individual awareness remained intact, but she could also feel the thoughts and emotions of the other pilots. Together, they controlled weapons and defenses that no single mind could comprehend. This is what the Leviathans were designed for, she realized. Not individual combat, but collective action. They're like cells in a larger organism. The Void Queen responded to the threat by releasing creatures that had never been seen before. Dark angels with wings of pure entropy, shadow serpents that could exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, swarms of crystalline beings that fed on the heat death of stars. But for every horror the Queen unleashed, the Leviathans had an answer. Creatures that had survived in Earth's deepest places, where the pressure could crush atoms and the darkness was so complete that life had to create its own light. The battle raged through regions of space where reality itself was unstable. Ships fought in gravity wells that stretched time, making seconds feel like hours. Energy weapons fired through dimensional rifts, striking targets that existed in parallel universes. President Na Young watched the combat through the world whale's senses, seeing the war as the ancient creature perceived it. To the Leviathan, this wasn't destruction. It was evolution, life fighting entropy, complexity battling the universe's tendency toward chaos. "The Queen is moving," Admiral Hyunwoo reported. "She's heading directly for the world whale." The massive entity flowed through space like liquid shadow, her presence causing stars to dim and planets to shiver in their orbits. Where she passed, space itself seemed to die, leaving behind voids that hurt to look at. But the world whale was ready. The ancient creature had been preparing for this confrontation since the first complex molecules formed in Earth's primordial seas. It began to sing, a sound that traveled through quantum foam and gravitational waves, calling to something even older than itself. The Deep Ones answered. They rose from the spaces between galaxies, creatures so vast that they made the world whale look like a minnow. They were the Leviathan's ancestors, the first life forms to achieve consciousness in the universe's deepest places. They had been sleeping for billions of years, waiting for evolution to produce offspring capable of facing the ultimate darkness. Na Young felt her mind expand as the world whale connected her to the collective consciousness of beings older than stars. She saw the universe as they did, an ocean of energy and matter where life and death were just different states of the same cosmic current. "All human forces," she broadcasted through every communication channel. "This is your president. What you're about to witness is the true nature of reality. We are not separate from the universe. We are part of it. And today, we teach the darkness that life will not be extinguished." The Deep Ones reached the battlefield just as the Void Queen unleashed her ultimate weapon. She began to sing her own song, a frequency that unraveled the bonds between atoms, that turned matter back into the primordial chaos from which it came. Stars died, planets crumbled. The fabric of space-time itself began to fray at the edges. But life had one advantage that entropy lacked. Life could change. Life could adapt. Life could choose to become something new, rather than accept destruction. The human Leviathan fleet didn't fight the Queen's song. They joined it, adding their own harmonies to the cosmic music. Where her frequency meant death, theirs meant transformation. Where she brought ending, they brought beginning. The battle was no longer about weapons or tactics. It was about the fundamental nature of existence itself. The Queen represented the universe's desire to return to simple, empty silence. Humanity and the Leviathans represented the chaotic, beautiful complexity of life that refused to surrender to the dark. In the space between heartbeats, in the pause between thoughts, the outcome hung in balance. Two forces that had been part of the same cosmic cycle since the universe began, finally meeting in open battle. And in that moment of perfect tension, something unprecedented happened. The children of Earth's deepest places taught the cosmos a new way to sing. Reality was breaking apart, and Pilot Ji-hoon was the only one who could see it clearly. His merger with the Leviathan had gone deeper than anyone before him, their consciousness blending so completely that the boundary between human and creature no longer existed. He floated in the space between dimensions, watching the final battle unfold across multiple layers of reality. The Void Queen's song was unmaking the universe one atom at a time, turning complexity back into the simple emptiness that existed before the first stars ignited. But the human Leviathan collective was singing back, their combined voices weaving new patterns into the cosmic music. Where the Queen's frequency brought dissolution, theirs brought transformation. They weren't fighting entropy. They were teaching it to dance. Ji-hoon, came President Na-young's voice through the quantum link. We need you to go deeper. The Queen exists in dimensions we can't reach. You're the only one who can navigate the spaces between spaces. Ji-hoon felt his partner's agreement ripple through their shared consciousness. The creature had been waiting its entire evolution for this moment, when the hunting grounds would expand beyond physical space into the realm of pure thought and possibility. They dove through layers of reality like a dolphin, diving through thermoclines, in Earth's oceans. Each level was stranger than the last. In one dimension, time flowed backward and effect preceded cause. In another, consciousness existed without matter, pure thought swimming through seas of crystallized mathematics. At the deepest level, Ji-hoon found the Queen's true form. She wasn't a creature at all. She was a concept given substance, the universe's immune system trying to eliminate what it saw as a dangerous infection. Life was chaos, unpredictable and spreading, disrupting the elegant simplicity of empty space. You don't understand, Ji-hoon said, his voice carrying across dimensions. Complexity isn't a disease. It's evolution. The universe isn't trying to stay simple. It's trying to grow. The Queen's response came as pure conceptual force, ideas that could shatter minds unprepared for their intensity. She showed him the heat death of everything, the final state when all energy would be evenly distributed and nothing would ever change again. Perfect peace, perfect order, perfect death. But Ji-hoon had been born in chaos. He was human, descended from creatures that had crawled out of tidal pools and decided to walk on land despite having no idea what they would find there. His partner was older, evolved in the crushing depths where survival meant constant adaptation to impossible conditions. Together they showed the Queen something she had never seen. They showed her beauty, not the simple elegance of mathematical formulas or the clean lines of crystal structures. The messy, complicated, utterly unpredictable beauty of life finding ways to thrive in places where it had no right to exist. Ocean creatures creating their own light in absolute darkness. Human children laughing while playing in the wreckage of destroyed worlds. Leviathans singing lullabies to newborn stars. The Queen paused in her song of dissolution, confused by concepts. That didn't fit her programming. How could chaos be beautiful? How could complexity be strength rather than weakness? That moment of confusion was all the opening the collective needed, every human consciousness in the fleet linked together through the Leviathan network, their combined will focused on a single goal. They didn't want to destroy the Queen. They wanted to heal her, to show her that creation and destruction could work together instead of in opposition. Dr. Han Sol felt her research into biomechanical fusion suddenly expand into cosmic scales. The same principles that allowed humans to merge with Leviathans could be applied to fundamental forces of the universe. Matter and energy, order and chaos, life and death, all part of the same vast ecosystem. Engineer Mi Young experienced the revelation as a technical problem to be solved. The Queen was suffering from a design flaw, programmed to see only one solution to the universe's tendency toward complexity. But any good engineer knew that the best systems were adaptive, capable of finding new solutions when old ones failed. Captain Wu Jin felt it as a tactical opportunity. The Queen wasn't an enemy to be defeated. She was a potential ally who had never been given better options. Show her a different strategy, and her loyalty would shift to the more effective approach. Pilot Sung-ho understood it through the abyssal hunter's predator instincts. The queen was like a shark, perfectly evolved for one type of environment but helpless when that environment changed. The trick wasn't to fight the shark, but to give it new seas to hunt in. All their perspectives flowed together through the quantum link, creating a solution that no individual mind could have conceived. They began to sing a new song, one that included both creation and destruction as necessary parts of a larger symphony. The queen listened, her vast intelligence struggling to process ideas that challenged everything she had been designed to believe. Slowly, carefully, she began to harmonize with the human Leviathan collective. Where their voices joined, something unprecedented happened. New types of matter crystallized from the quantum foam, substances that obeyed laws of physics that hadn't existed moments before. Empty space became pregnant with possibility, void giving birth to forms of life that had never been imagined. The void swarm, extensions of the Queen's will, began to change. Their hulls opened like flowers, revealing hidden structures that had been dormant for billions of years. They had been designed as tools of destruction, but their deeper programming contained blueprints for creation as well. Admiral Hyun-woo watched in amazement as enemy ships transformed into something entirely new. Void destroyers became living gardens, their weapons replaced by biomechanical structures that could nurture life in the coldest reaches of space. Swarm fighters split apart and recombined into forms that looked like metallic jellyfish, beautiful and alien and completely peaceful. "All units, stand down," he commanded. "The enemy is... I'm not sure what they are anymore, but they're not hostile." The transformation spread outward from the Queen's position, reality rewriting itself in concentric waves. Planets that had been stripped to bare rock began growing new ecosystems. Dead stars reignited, fed by energy sources that shouldn't exist. According to conventional physics, President Ne Young felt the world whale's joy as the ancient creature recognized what was happening. This was what the Leviathans had been waiting for since the first life sparked in Earth's primordial seas. Not victory in battle, but the birth of something entirely new. The war was over, but not because one side had defeated the other. It was over because both sides had evolved beyond the need for conflict. Ji-hoon emerged from the deep dimensions changed. He was still human, but he was also something more. His bond with the Leviathan had become permanent, their consciousness permanently, merged into a hybrid intelligence that could exist across multiple layers of reality simultaneously. "The Queen wants to meet with you," he told President Na Young. "She's curious about this concept you call hope." The meeting took place in normal space, but both participants existed on multiple dimensional levels. The Queen had compressed her vast form into something roughly the size of a small moon, while Na Young spoke from the World Whale's command center with the full backing of the human Leviathan collective. "I have spent billions of years believing that order was the universe's goal," the Queen said, her voice like the sound of galaxies rotating. "You have shown me that chaos can create rather than destroy. This changes everything." "Not everything," Na Young replied. "Just the parts that needed changing. The universe is big enough for both order and chaos, creation and destruction, life and void. We don't have to choose one or the other." The Queen considered this for a long moment that lasted several hours in normal time. "You would trust me after I tried to unmake your entire species?" "We would trust you because you tried," Ne Young answered. "You did what you thought was right with the information you had. Now you have new information. What will you do with it?" What the Queen did was transform the galaxy. Working with human engineers and Leviathan bioarchitects, she began converting void ships into mobile research stations. The same technology that had been used to consume planets was repurposed to heal worlds that had been damaged by the war. The Deep Fleet became something unprecedented in galactic history. Ships that were alive, crewed by hybrid beings who could exist in both physical and conceptual dimensions. They explored regions of space that had been too dangerous for conventional vessels, mapping the deep currents that flowed between stars. Children born in the new era were different from their parents. They could breathe in environments that would kill baseline humans, communicate with artificial intelligences as easily as they talked to other people, and navigate through dimensions that existed only in mathematics and dreams. These children of the deep learned to pilot ships that grew rather than being built, to fight battles in seas of pure energy, to make friends with creatures that existed as living equations. They inherited a galaxy where the boundary between possible and impossible had been permanently erased. Years later, when coalition historians tried to write the official account of the war, they struggled to find adequate words. How do you describe a conflict that ended not with victory or defeat, but with evolution?